Good day to everybody. This is Roberto Yativa, and I'm having today the pleasure of a beautiful interview with Sarah Evans. I've known Sarah for several years, since 2015, when I met her for the first time in a temporary trip to Toronto. And since then, we have been working over the years on and off in person and also remotely. I've been amazed to see her transition, her journey of healing and transformation. And that's why I decided to invite her today for this interview. How are you today, Sarah?
Well, thank you. And thank you so much for the invitation. This is such a treat to be with you in this space.
Thank you. All right, so let's begin. I have for you a few questions that I would like to share with our audience. I would like to start just basically asking you to introduce yourself and share a bit of who you are.
Thank you. My name is Sarah Jane Evans. I'm calling in from Collingwood, Ontario, near Toronto. It's the traditional land of the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat, the Anishinaabe peoples here, and they're so present. So I just would like to preface that the grandmothers and the warriors and the artists that are really with me are the first to be introduced in this interview. My background, career-wise, has been in food and food security, most recently in neurotech and brain health. I've always been really interested in the transformational space. I work in biotech, so I work in helping folks integrate biotechnology into learning how to meditate and sleep better, learning how to advance their brain health. And that's one side of my life. The other side, I'm a guide and a breathwork practitioner. I have a company called This Is Breathwork. And it's a collection of healers and artists and guides and astrologers and chefs and DJs. And we get together to really assess and design experiences and ceremonies to help transform and folks on the healing path and to really anchor light. My partner and I are both chefs. And so in my spare time, you can find us cooking for community events, for ceremonies and retreats. And we have a lot of really beautiful ways that we bring food into the transformational space.
Well, that's amazing, Sarah. I'm very impressed to hear everything that you're doing. I wasn't aware of those details. So great for you. This is amazing, very rich life that you're having in resonance with your soul, your mission and purpose. So very happy to hear that you are manifesting it in these beautiful ways. Now, going into process of learning from the beginning, from where we both met each other, I would like to ask you, how did you find me or come across the first time that we met?
Yes, I was in a very, I mean, this is probably common with you, but I was in a very low point of my life. I was very confused about how my life had landed me in this moment of confusion, depression, poverty. That journey, I always, when I think about, when I reflect on how I met you, that journey really started about 3 years before. Um, where if you looked at my life, it looked incredible. I had this sort of peak career experience. I was on a TV show. I was consulting many different community projects. I was building a greenhouse, and I had running an underground restaurant out of my home. It was jet set, beautiful, glamorous. And a year after that, I really had the complete opposite life experience where I had run through all of my savings. I didn't have a home. My dog and I at that time were couch surfing and even spending time living sort of out in the woods in Toronto, to be honest. And we had really come to a low point, and I wasn't able to really talk to anybody about that. It was something that I was not understanding how to move through, and just thought it was going to get better. And eventually, that path, as we know, doesn't tend to get better until some things are addressed. And so all of that to say is that moment led me to three really beautiful human beings who brought me into some transformational work and introduced me to you. And this is through Jen Polo, Sophia Randera, and Alex Hazisavas. And Sophia took me aside and she's like, I have this friend that I think maybe you should go see. He might be able to help integrate some of these experiences you're having. And as soon as she said your name, it was just a trust piece. As you know, we're just called to things, and it was one of the few things at that moment that I trusted. And I think I called you the next day.
Now, in terms of the internal aspect, I would like to hear more about how it was for you experiencing those difficult times emotionally, mentally, and even spiritually, because I think that's a common factor for many people. We need to reach certain place to start getting an open mind to seek for help and trying to find solutions and real change in our lives. If we are comfortable, probably we will not do it. Most people will need to go through certain emotional thoughts and spiritual sensations. So, in your case, how was that at that time?
Yeah, and there's so many layers to this. And I think I'll start with, emotionally for me. I'm a very resourceful person, and I've, left home really early and have bounced around a lot. And so it took me a very long time to register that I was uncomfortable or that things weren't going well. And so that, I knew that I was struggling with burnout. I was struggling with some cycles of exhaustion where I would completely need to detach from my job. I didn't really register that something was off, even though I would go through these big cycles of kind of being so available, and then I would slowly lose my energy, and then I would get really depressed. But as someone who's very optimistic, I'm really able to jump into something new, whatever's kind of shiny and exciting in front of me. It honestly took me a really long time, probably till I was in my early 30s, to really understand that these cycles were like not serving me. So emotionally, what that looked like was I would go through these like really, really low moments. And I was never someone that wanted to attach the word depression to what I was doing. I knew really early on that there were fallow cycles of life, that there was times that we can spend restoring. So it really, honestly, Roberto, took me until I was sort of homeless under a tree, with my dog, having, a month of not having a home and trying to figure it out, and really sort of coming to this point of not knowing what to do. And for the first time, it probably took me about 3 months of not having a home, of being really depressed, of not being able to talk to anybody because I didn't know how to talk about it, um, to really understand that something was actually sort of spiritually wrong, or my career was out of alignment. So I'm a bit of a hard nut. And so it took a minute, and I had bounced back from many adversities in my life, and so I considered myself resilient, but that wasn't serving me. That resilience was really out of alignment, and it was not something that was helping me at the time. And so, um, what that looked like was really, now I can name it as a lot of shame was happening. I was not understanding, that the emotions I was going through was very natural. That, because I had made a lot of decisions that were out of alignment with my soul's purpose, I was just dragging all this energy behind me, and I was presenting a face that wasn't, and a personality that wasn't quite a fit, and it was just exhausting.
I would like to mention that I find a lot of people, because of the collective programming, there is three factors: resistance, avoidance, and denial. Whenever we're going through difficult times, we tend to go into these modes, and it makes more difficult the journey for us. And we are not comfortable in embracing uncertainty. And we are programmed to be always in control. So I imagine when you were with the home, not feeling that you were under control, like that triggers so many emotions like you were describing. So it is interesting to see how sometimes we need to go to that level of pressure from circumstances to then have a realization or decide to start the process of healing and awakening,
Right.
whatever it takes, right? That's what we're here.
And it's funny, that was, let me see, that pressure was probably 2014, so like over a decade ago. And I'll still, to this day, you still feel, I definitely don't need to be pushed to those extremes to understand that something's going on, but you'll feel the little echo of that pressure when the pressure starts to build. And that's a great point. It's one thing that you've really taught me is like, this is really understanding our relationship to pressure and our relationship to what alignment feels like or doesn't feel like. And in those moments, that next step for me after understanding that I was out of alignment was actually going through 3 years of fasting ceremony, where that, bubble of just sitting with yourself and creation to really understand what's here, the shame, the denial, when you're being valued. And I was definitely valued, highly valued for things that I was doing in the world, but those things were not really in alignment with what I should have been doing. So it's hard to break out of that, and it's hard to find a story that actually fits, because your life feels really confusing because you're getting a lot of rewards or money or validation in other places, but that's all external, obviously.
That's another big problem I find in most people, that since we are little kids, we are trained to seek for validation. So we adapt, we change who we are for the person that we are expected to be. And in that journey, we're never going to be fulfilled and content. Eventually, we will end up like you were, exhausted, drained, and maybe depressed with being somebody else. So it's very refreshing when we just drop that need to have validation and start basically seeking what is it that I really want to do in life, I really want to express in this world. So great work. Now, I would like to know if before we met, there were other techniques that you approach, and how was that for you? If that you find results in the process?
Um, that's a great question. So I had been through a few different rounds of difficulty with Western medicine. So I'd had a skin condition for a while and was really sort of, let's just say, mistreated and misdiagnosed for years and years in the Western medicine world. And that led me to acupuncture and energy work. So throughout my travels, I definitely had a lot of acupuncture and was familiar with energy work, but it was largely Reiki. I think at that time I had my Reiki 1 certification by the time I had met you. But really, that was kind of the extent. I was really lucky, Roberto, when I was 19 through 24. I lived on Vancouver Island, and I was really exposed to a lot of different interesting modalities. So I would be able to sit in grandmother circles. I was able to sit with, covens of witches. I was able to sit with, we were all laboratory rats for our friends who were going to acupuncture school. So I had a lot of exposure, but I hadn't ever, I bounced around to lots of things, but I never was dedicated to learning or really embracing one modality when I was meeting you. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. I'm happy to hear that you had such a rich experience, trying different techniques and modalities. Now, I would like to ask you, what was your first session like? What surprised you?
You know, I prided myself at the time. I'm somebody who's very active. I'm very in my body. I was a dancer. I was an athlete. And I remember the first thing I remember about your session is you were asking me where in my body I would feel certain things, and I couldn't answer. I think that first session you answered all of the questions that you were asking me because I could not find myself. I couldn't feel. I didn't understand my internal cues at the level that I thought I did. And so it was a huge awakening for me that even though I felt very active and I felt very alive in the world, I wasn't necessarily in my body or really paying attention to these internal cues. And that came from years of dismissing myself in favor of work or in favor of anything else that other than the discomfort that was actually bubbling in my body. So I say my main memory is just I think the sadness and the frustration that I wasn't who I thought I was, and that I didn't know myself, because that was kind of a revelation for me at that point.
Great. Now, can you describe what a typical session felt like for you emotionally and energetically?
Yeah, I mean, the moment I ask you for a session, the session has started. So for me, there's this build up to coming to see you. And what that looks like for me is there's a thread in my life that just wants to be addressed. And so there's usually some physical or environmental or emotional difficulty before I even step in the room with you. And so that becomes, from day one, that was very clear that um whatever it was that you and I were going to do together felt very strong because it would happen immediately. It would be like, oh, difficulty with my mom. I'd get in a fight with my mom, like right before Roberto's session. And I'm someone who's very connected to the weather. And so there would always be a sign from the weather on my way to see you about what was going to happen. And honestly, for the first 3 years, it was storms. I would just get these wild storms, and I'd be like drenched wet and like come into the condo where you were. And I was like, okay, I see we're in the emotional field. I see the chaos externally being represented. So emotionally, it felt like serious. I took it really seriously. I didn't really understand logically what was happening, and that to me, I just really immediately trusted. Like, we were around the same age, and you have a lot of qualities that I don't possess. So you're very grounding to be around. You have a very grounding presence, and so I was able to trust your physical presence and your voice really really well. And the way that you were able to guide me wasn't telling me like I was doing something wrong or I should be something else. It was just really asking a lot of questions. And so that really helped me to kind of unpack my moment. And so I felt very I wouldn't say that I stepped into sessions feeling safe because everything was so alive that was getting addressed, but I felt very safe in being guided through that process emotionally. Logically, the first couple sessions, I had no idea what you were talking about. I just was the technology you were using. I knew about Palladian work through Reiki, and I knew about stories through my Indigenous friends about Palladians, for example. But I didn't understand what you were doing. All I knew is that the waters in my body responded to the invocations. They responded to your questions. They responded to the work, and I just was learning. I realized was in a process of learning how to trust my body, and so I really sort of let go of the wheel. Was like, okay, I don't know what's happening, but we're gonna stay here, and we're gonna see how far this can go. And I can say that it's generally uncomfortable, and then um throughout the first, I think, 3 sessions, I really got a handle on how my intuition wanted me to relate to it. And so I was able through our sessions to start exploring, okay, well, this is third eye here. Okay, this is like information coming from my bones. Okay, this is dropping in as a download. So I really was able to explore different ways that I receive energy through our sessions. And then afterwards, there was just so much emotional liberation. I think I cried in every session for at least the first 2 years. And as you know, I have a very layered life story. And so I was very grateful that a man, because I had a lot of women healers, but I was really grateful that a man was able to be representative masculine energy, not needing anything from me, but really patient and very accepting of my energy. And that really was new for me. I had a lot of struggles with particularly men in authority and particularly men healers. So I didn't really have a great experience with a lot of healers and doctors that were men. And so you were probably my first, I think you were the first masculine representation of a healer and a guide that was really in integrity. And I will forever be grateful for that.
Thank you, thank you. That's a beautiful uh, perception. I definitely try my best to anchor the masculine with the heart open and my crown open, so that way I can be a vessel, but holding space in that way. Now, something that you mentioned, it really, I think it's important to emphasize. Many people that I know, when they have a session booked, something happens. They manifest even things that deprive them from being able to go into the session, like the car that broken, or they just fall asleep and forgot. It can be many examples, but that comes from an internal resistance. And it's important to mention that sometimes we are battling with our subconscious mind, the past wounds, the shadow side that we all have. And when you have an opportunity to really go there and to clear things, it gets a little bit uncomfortable. And there is an invitation to really know that that's normal. That happens to all of us. And we have to keep that energy of determination, that energy of focus. I want to do this. I'm ready for this. And this is the way I want to do it. So in that way, no matter what other elements are taking place, your intention, your focus, your decision from inside will prevail and you will make it happen. So this is just something that I have seen so many times. People really start the process of intending to make some changes, and there are the resistance elements coming up in many ways. So it was interesting to see that you also experienced that. Now, in terms of the breakthroughs or aha moments that you will never forget, anything that you can share about that?
Oh my, there's so many. So I do want to speak about this because I feel like I have an opportunity to have a different perspective than maybe a lot of people. So my nervous system is built for aha moments. I have a lot of energy. I've had a lot of peak experiences in my life, cooking for 60,000 people, organizing massive restaurants, creating festivals in the middle of nowhere. So when a lot of people look for these aha moments, that's actually not what I trust in my life. And so through you, I've actually learned the opposite of aha moments to trust. So one of the things that I really appreciate and have learned through your work is that you give us, right off the bat, you give us meditations to do before you even come in. Then there's the session, then there's the integration, and then you check up after saying, how are you doing? And so there's this process, and, 10 years ago, our dopamine wasn't cycles weren't quite as broken, and so there wasn't this immediate like, okay, I'm going to you and you're going to fix something immediately. That it was less, there was a lot more space around it. But I can't emphasize enough that what really stuck for me has been the idea of trusting the process and to also do due diligence in devoting a type of energy and patience and resilience to that process. And so there's an element of trust that's involved. And I think that I was able to, through you unpacking specific storylines that I could have never unpacked myself, and I'll get to those in a moment, I really started to trust the entire process. And through that, it's given me a cadence and a regularity. And I'm someone who's like an incredibly inconsistent person. I'm in a lot of different places. I bilocate all the time. And so when you speak something, you're so present with that thing that it exists. Whereas my energies are very diffused. So I learned not only the process and to trust the process, but how to collect my edges and to be incredibly present with the process and with the moment. And so that has been the thing that has served me the most through your work. But I will say that I have an adoption story. So I'm adopted, and there were many personality traits or struggles that I didn't really understand that didn't sort of match my direct life experience. And you were really able to take us back to some like experiences that had left an imprint on my psychology because of that. And that was a total revelation for me. And in fact, that has led me years later, 2018, I ended up meeting my birth mom. And I don't think I could have ever opened up that world if I hadn't have done that work with you first. And I really, integrated it and accepted it as part of my well-being. And then I would say that we definitely went into some past life work around my relationship with men. And that was really impactful. And I noticed not only a change immediately, but the way that, there were very few sessions that like it was immediately something was never the same again. And the sessions that we have done around my relationship with my romantic relationships, has been almost like the missing link in terms of how I've approached things, how I've worked through these difficulties and these learnings. And then I'll be like, I'll know when I've reached the threshold of what I can understand. And so when I call in my ecosystem with romantic partnerships, you're always the first person I want to call. I'm like, all right, let's do some work here, because it has been so impactful to go back, not just through past life experiences with them, but the energy that you're able to call out of my psychology and call out that I have not been able to do on my own has been really impactful.
Thank you. Great. Something I have noticed in time, it's a big shift that I impressed to see in you. When I met you, I felt that you were a feminine woman, but with a lot of masculine energy. You were very masculine. Even your aura filled with projected energy. And now you are more comfortable with your feminine energy. You are experiencing it, enjoying it. I can see that this is really flourishing in many ways in your life. So, on top of that shift, that I think is important, what other shifts have you seen in other aspects of your life? Maybe your health, your relationships, or your connection to your purpose?
So many. So, in if I think about some of the core issues that we've addressed, um, having this full acceptance of who I am. So I think I had this story before we met that I was sort of um a wild card, or like kind of a forgotten soul. Like I slipped through the cosmic cracks. I didn't know my story. I'd run, I had a friction with my family. I'd run away from home really early. And so I had a lot of fractured relationships. And my dad had passed away when I was 13 as well. And so there was just this over consideration around survival and safety that I had. And so I think through the work in becoming, in fully accepting my story and fully sort of not even just understanding, but really loving every aspect of my story and who I am. That has really been the path to understanding what it takes to feel safe in my body, which is probably the hardest thing for me to do in this lifetime. And the reason why I wasn't able to lean into my life purpose is that I wasn't feeling safe to express myself in those ways. And so I've cultivated a lot of safety, and when you sort of are on your own for a long time, there you kind of you learn to be the masculine and the feminine, all at once. And it's definitely it's definitely something that, cultivating that safety, it sort of ripples out into all of the other areas. And so the safety shifts is one, so that I'm really able to step into areas that, being more artistic, being going into sharing my gifts, and sharing the way that I see the world. Quite honestly, I always had access to sort of broader consciousness. I always had was able to hear things and see things, and um, you know, I have a friend that calls my brain cinema of the unseen. Just sort of dances in front of my eyes, more so than most people. But I never shared that. I never shared my perspective on how I see the world. And through doing work with you, that's just been something that, because I have safety in my body and because I'm able to value and honor my own life path, then that has, started to come forward in a way that now I'm able to help others with that. And that's been such a cathartic, beautiful moment. And the other shift is, you know, I think prior to doing work with you, I always big energy. So I'm really built for like groups of people. My brain works better in teams. I love being a part of like large projects. And so that large tends to get inflated, or it's like misplaced in terms of how I work with that energy. And through working with you, I'm really able to understand that I'm really just here to create and be in my joy creating and really enjoy my life, whatever that looks like. And it doesn't need to have a job title, it doesn't need to look any certain way. That my enjoyment is actually at the core of it, and that life purpose just kind of tends to unfold. It's not this thing I need to figure out. And that was huge for me because I didn't have this desire early to like figure out what I was supposed to be doing in life. I just really I was really sort of attracted to whatever excited me. But because I didn't have a strong internal barometer or like internal programming around loving myself and accepting myself and honoring my own gifts, I really was able to get thrown off course in really big ways. And so now, even though I still get thrown off course, I'm really able to course correct in a really short amount of time, and I'm really able to have a sort of a compass that I really trust, and rely on. And now, thankfully, other people do too, and that feels really beautiful.
Thank you. You just answered my next question, so I will go to the next one. How could you describe your connection to yourself today?
Uh, my connection to myself. So in this moment, I've kind of re-fallen in love with all of these aspects of my consciousness. So I think through the healing journey, I've been able to pull out all these parts of Sarah, these aspects of Sarah. And I no longer kind of consider myself a person, but I'm in this ecosystem. And I'm really like connected to how the give and take and the call and response of my ecosystem works. And like, I'm kind of delighted to be experimenting and playing with that all of the time. More recently, I've really had this past winter, the last 6 months, I've had a deep portal of grief and even working with anger. And I think that would have normally gone very differently if I didn't have such a good, solid relationship with my essence. And so I'm a little bit, again, I'll use the word cathartic. I used to get this reflection a lot. People would be like, "Oh, you're so badass. You do so many amazing things." And I could never receive it. I didn't really know that that was true. And now, yeah, like I'm a total badass. So, I get that. So thank you.
That's great. That's great. The more that we learn to embrace ourselves as we are, with no judgment, or being completely open, and providing to ourselves this beautiful energy of unconditional love and support, then life will comply to that. The universe will comply to that. The thing is that a lot of people manifest difficulties because inside they're telling the universe, I don't love myself, I don't think that I'm good enough, or these different versions. So that's what we are manifesting. And this is a manifestation that is like a mirror showing us outside what is really happening inside. So great to hear that is also something that you experience and that now is changed for good. Now, I would like to ask you, what would you say to someone who is curious about this type of healing but is hesitant?
Mm. You know, I find a lot of information in silence. And by information, I mean, what our resistance feels like. And so, my first suggestion to anyone who's curious about anything is to sit with it. When you sit quietly, and notice everything that's happening as you make space to sit quietly, try and do it, or do it regularly. What happens in your mind, what happens in your body, a lot of that can be named as different forms of resistance. And we're in this moment where we are really valued, like we really value what we see, we really value scientific proof in our society. And so what I like to do is find areas in my body, or find areas in my life that I already trust. Okay, if I really trust that I know how to make this recipe, what does that feel like in my body? And then I'll ask the question, okay, should I go see this man Roberto? And does it feel sort of the same? So I like to frequency match what trust feels like, what my yes feels like. And so then I can kind of put the information about what you're all about, and how you use different technologies, and even who you are, and I can say, okay, does this person have something for me? Do I have something for this person? And if I trust my yes, then I generally will follow that. And quite honestly, in this day and age, it's like the information age. There's so many things available, even compared to 10 years ago. I'm kind of like, why not? Like, if you can explore something, have the opportunity. I think that it's one thing I'm really eternally grateful, is that I've been able to find really high caliber healers and people who anchor a lot of light in a lot of different ways. And so if you can get in front of one of them, why not? And it doesn't mean that it's for you forever, but maybe it's for you for the moment.
Thank you. Beautiful response. Now, in your own words, how could you describe the way it work?
So I think the primary thing that I feel like one of your modalities is to call on um, Palladium technologies and the technologies that are available to us to work with the human field, to work with the earth field. But one of the things that you have the technology of prayer in a way that is so strong, that I feel like through the technology of prayer and intention, you are able to guide very miraculous things, and you're able to guide awareness in a really, really deep way, simply by the fact that you can collect your attention, that you can collect your words, that you have repeated over the course of your life these words, these codings, this prayer technology in a certain way, and so that it comes in, and it's able to interface. And so one of the things the visuals that I get when I work with you is that I'm kind of like this, like I come to you, I'm like, oh, I got these problems, and I'm a bit like a windstorm. And you're like a tree. You're just like a tree. And I just get to bounce my energy off you. And eventually my energy kind of settles down. It's like, oh,
Okay, let's
let's just be trees together. And so I get to bounce my chaos off this prayer technology. But not only that, it's not Sarah and Roberto sitting with each other. You're truly in counsel with my life, and I'm in counsel with your life. And I get the benefit of your entire ecosystem, and you get the benefit, should I give you access to my entire ecosystem. So when I see the modality of how you work, it's not just on the mind, it's not just on the body, it's not just on the emotional state. I even think spirituality is kind of a silly word in this moment, because there's such a broad aspect of consciousness of other that's outside of the body that you work with as well. And I think that it's a really important technology for this day and age, when we're still really repairing um, the limiting belief around individualism. Like we're really at peak individualism, thinking that we're all kind of alone and we're really in the minefield. And so being able to work with you gives you so many other ways to explore healing outside the mind. And I think that's really powerful.
Thank you. I was recalling a little chat that we had yesterday um, as a preparation for today's interview, and you mentioned something interesting that I was thinking about later in terms of your perspective of my work, in terms of helping people to identify things that are not even aware of. Can you explain again that so that people can hear this interesting perspective that you have?
Yeah, thank you. So if you think about, everything that you know, but we don't know what we don't know. It's, you can call it subconscious, but also we move really, really quickly. And I find that when I'm in front of you, you really understand how to slow down our awareness mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. And so I see things that I miss because I'm moving too fast, first of all. And then because of the work that you do and where you're able to go, you're able to access the unconscious. And so these are things that I didn't know that I needed to work with. An example would be, one of the benefits I've seen with working with you is I'm actually able to be in romantic partnership in such a more beautiful and fulfilled way. But I didn't know that I needed to work on receiving love. I thought I had to do more things or work on myself more, or, this sort of outward motion of like, well, have to learn things. Actually, was this practice in learning how to receive. And so we were able to bring up a lot of parts that I didn't even understand that I needed to work on. And I think that that's, kind of the point of going to someone like yourself, is that you're the first step in asking for assistance is that you're saying, okay, there's something about myself I can't see and I don't know, and I'd like help identifying it. You do that really, really masterfully.
Thank you. Now, we're about to finish the interview. I would like to ask you the last question. Is there anything else you would like to share from your heart to anyone watching this?
I feel like all life is truly this beautiful ceremony. And the more we can take a moment to come into appreciation of not just all of our victories, but our challenges, and then cross over these micro fears we have of asking each other for help or to explore a new modality because it might help you love yourself more or be in more of service to your communities. I think that's like the job of today, is to really understand that we're in this grand dance to learn how to love, and learn not only like in that process how to love more, but also how to exist with all of our let's say undesirable traits or shadow traits and our light at the same time. I think that um when we go and ask for help, no matter who it is, what we're doing is we're letting in light in places that we really probably couldn't do on our own. And I think it's one of the great things that the great fears that we have still is of each other. And I love that through working with you, one of the themes that has really emerged is that we all have something for each other. It's not like, we have these healers who are sort of these perfect human beings without shadow traits. Like I've gotten to know you, and we're friends. And so we really learn how to accept each other when we sit in front of our healers and our guides, and we understand how we are healers and guides for others. And it's something that I think is so important as we enter into this age where community is going to be asked uh, to come through us and to in such a different way. And so asking for help and exploring these modalities, in particular modalities that you may not understand, I think is just a fun and b so rewarding and so important to do.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate all the time that you have spent with me in this interview and sharing your amazing story. It's been a pleasure to work with you this part over the years. And as you say, we're not just a client connection, we are friends, and we have developed this beautiful friendship over the years and with a lot of respect and supporting each other. So very thankful for your time and happy to hear more details about your journey. And I hope this conversation can inspire others to just move forward in the healing process, in their own processing their own journey. So for those who are watching this video, if this conversation resonates with you, I invite you to visit my social media account as Pleiadian Soul Path. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to support you and start the journey. Thank you for watching.